Good evening, and welcome to the current debate. Tonight, we delve into a question that sparks passionate discussion across the nation. Should cannabis be fully legalized and regulated? We have a distinguished panel to explore this multifaceted issue. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, a sociologist, will argue in favor of legalization. Mr. David Chen, a community safety advocate, will present the case against it. And providing expert, evidence-based insights, we have Dr. Alina Hansen, a public health researcher. We'll begin with opening statements, followed by expert input, a moderated discussion, and finally, closing remarks from our speakers.
Thank you, Alex. The question of cannabis legalization is indeed complex, touching upon individual freedoms, public health, and economic realities. It's a conversation that requires nuance, not knee-jerk reactions. At its core, the argument for legalization rests on the principle of individual liberty and personal autonomy. In a free society, adults should have the right to make informed decisions about what they consume, provided their choices do not cause direct harm to others. Prohibition, as history has repeatedly shown, is often an ineffective and counterproductive policy. It doesn't eliminate demand, it merely drives it underground. Beyond individual rights, consider the substantial economic benefits. Legalizing and regulating cannabis would create a new, legitimate industry, generating thousands of jobs. More importantly, it would unlock a significant stream of tax revenue. This revenue could be earmarked for vital public services, such as improving our education system, bolstering healthcare infrastructure, or repairing our crumbling roads and bridges. These are tangible benefits that would improve communities. Furthermore, and critically, legalization is a powerful tool to undermine criminal enterprises. The illegal drug trade fuels violence and instability. By shifting cannabis sales to a regulated, legal market, we can significantly reduce the power and profits of these criminal organizations. This isn't about advocating for uncontrolled access. It's about responsible regulation, implementing age restrictions, controlling potency, ensuring product safety through testing, and licensing sellers. This is how we manage substances like alcohol and tobacco. A regulated framework allows for control, for public health campaigns, and for a more honest and open approach to a substance that is already widely used, albeit illegally. It's time to move from a failed policy of prohibition to a pragmatic one of regulation.
Thank you, Alex. While I acknowledge the arguments Dr. Hayes has presented, particularly concerning economic potential and the failures of outright prohibition for some substances, I believe we must proceed with extreme caution when it comes to the full legalization and commercialization of cannabis. My primary concern lies with public health. We cannot ignore the scientific evidence pointing to the risks associated with cannabis use, particularly for vulnerable populations. Increased availability and normalization could lead to higher rates of cannabis use disorder. There are documented concerns about the impact of regular cannabis use on mental health, including potential links to anxiety, depression, and, in some predisposed individuals, psychosis. The developing brains of adolescents and young adults are particularly susceptible to harm. Then there are the public safety implications. We've seen in some jurisdictions that have legalized cannabis an initial rise, or at least challenges, in dealing with cannabis-impaired driving. Ensuring road safety is paramount, and adding another potentially impairing substance more freely into the mix is a serious worry. Furthermore, the argument that regulation can perfectly control access, especially for youth, is optimistic, to say the least. Just as with alcohol and tobacco, despite age restrictions, underage use remains a persistent problem. Normalization can inadvertently lower perceived risk among young people. Finally, the projected societal costs could potentially outweigh the tax benefits. Increased burdens on our healthcare system to treat cannabis-related health issues, the need for more robust public awareness campaigns, and potential impacts on workplace productivity are all factors that need to be carefully weighed. While the idea of regulation is appealing in theory, The practical challenges of implementing a system that effectively mitigates all these substantial risks are immense. We must ask if we are truly prepared for the potential consequences.
Thank you, Alex. My role here is to provide a balanced overview of what current research tells us about cannabis, its effects, and the experiences of jurisdictions that have moved towards legalization. From a health perspective, cannabis is a complex substance with both potential therapeutic applications and known risks. Research has indicated its efficacy in managing chronic pain, alleviating nausea in chemotherapy patients, and reducing seizures in some forms of epilepsy. However, there are also well-documented risks. Smoking cannabis, much like tobacco, can lead to respiratory problems. Regular heavy use, especially starting in adolescence, is associated with potential negative impacts on cognitive development and an increased risk of developing cannabis use disorder for a segment of users, estimated to be around 9 to 10% of those who try it. Regarding mental health, while some individuals report using cannabis for anxiety relief, high-potency cannabis and frequent use have been linked with an increased risk of psychosis in vulnerable individuals and can exacerbate symptoms of some existing mental health conditions. Looking at jurisdictions that have legalized, the data is still emerging and often mixed. Some areas have reported significant tax revenues and a decrease in cannabis-related arrests, which is a positive outcome for social justice. However, others have seen initial increases in emergency room visits related to cannabis and challenges with impaired driving enforcement. Usage rates post-legalization vary. Some regions see a modest increase, particularly among older adults, while youth rates haven't always shown the dramatic spikes some feared, though this requires ongoing monitoring. The impact is heavily influenced by the specific regulatory model adopted. These regulatory models differ widely, from state-controlled monopolies on sales to private retail systems. Key variables include potency limits, advertising and packaging restrictions, age gates, and public education funding. Each choice has different implications for public health and market dynamics.
Thank you, Dr. Hansen, for that comprehensive overview. Dr. Hayes, Mr. Chen has raised significant concerns about public health and safety. How would a regulated system effectively address these, especially regarding youth access and impaired driving?
Those are valid concerns, Alex, and ones that any responsible regulatory framework must address head-on. Regarding public health, regulation allows us to implement measures that are impossible under prohibition. This includes strict age verification at points of sale, similar to alcohol, mandatory product testing for potency and contaminants, and clear labeling requirements. We can also fund public health campaigns with tax revenue, educating citizens, particularly young people, about the risks of cannabis use, and promoting responsible consumption. Compare this to the current illegal market, where there are no age checks, no product safety standards, and where potency can be dangerously high and unknown. Regulation brings control and transparency. As for impaired driving, this is a serious issue regardless of cannabis's legal status. We need to invest more in law enforcement training for drug recognition experts, develop better roadside testing technology, and implement strong penalties, just as we do for alcohol-impaired driving. Furthermore, let's not forget the social justice aspect. Prohibition has disproportionately criminalized minority communities for cannabis offenses. Legalization, done right, can begin to rectify these historical injustices by expunging records and creating opportunities in the new legal industry for those most affected.
Mr. Chen, Dr. Hayes emphasizes the control that regulation offers, drawing parallels with alcohol. Do you believe such measures would be truly sufficient to protect public health and safety, particularly concerning the normalization of another psychoactive substance?
While I appreciate Dr. Hayes' points about the theoretical benefits of control, the comparison with alcohol and tobacco regulation isn't entirely reassuring. We still see significant public health problems stemming from both those legally regulated substances, including underage use and addiction. My concern is that full commercialization, even with regulation, inevitably leads to increased promotion and availability, which in turn normalizes the substance. This normalization can lower the perception of risk, especially among young people who are most vulnerable to potential harms. The black market argument also needs scrutiny. In some jurisdictions with legal cannabis, a resilient illicit market often persists, typically by undercutting the taxed and regulated products on price. So legalization doesn't automatically eliminate criminal enterprises, it just changes their dynamics. And while impaired driving enforcement is crucial, the existing tools for detecting cannabis impairment are not as straightforward or as rapid as alcohol breathalyzers, posing ongoing challenges for law enforcement. This is a practical hurdle that can't be understated. The potential for increased healthcare costs to manage new cases of cannabis use disorder or other health sequelae must be honestly evaluated against projected tax revenues. It's not clear that the economic benefits will truly offset these societal burdens in the long run.
Dr. Hansen, based on your research, how effective have public education campaigns been in jurisdictions that have legalized cannabis, particularly in mitigating youth use or informing about potency?
The effectiveness of public education campaigns is an area of active research and varies considerably. Campaigns that are well-funded, sustained over time, and targeted appropriately, using evidence-based messaging, do show promise in increasing knowledge about risks and potentially influencing behavior, especially when combined with other regulatory measures, like restricted advertising. However, they are not a panacea. They compete with marketing from legal industries, social media influences, and peer group norms. Clear messaging about potency, the risks of edibles, and the dangers of impaired driving are crucial components. It's an ongoing effort, not a one-time fix.
In closing, the evidence suggests that a carefully regulated cannabis market offers significant advantages over the current system of prohibition. It respects individual autonomy for adults to make informed choices. It promises substantial economic benefits through taxation and job creation, funds which can be reinvested into our communities. Crucially, it allows us to dismantle a key revenue stream for criminal organizations and address the historical injustices of disproportionate enforcement. Regulation is not a surrender to cannabis. It is the assertion of control. It allows for public health measures, product safety standards, and age restrictions that are simply impossible in an illicit market. Moving forward, the focus should be on crafting sensible, evidence-based regulations that prioritize public health and safety, learning from other jurisdictions, and adapting as we go. It's a pragmatic path towards a safer and more equitable approach.
To conclude, while I understand the allure of potential tax revenue and the arguments for individual liberty, the potential harms associated with the full legalization and commercialization of cannabis remain deeply concerning to me. The risks to public health, particularly concerning addiction, mental health impacts, and the developing brains of our youth, are substantial. The challenges to public safety, such as impaired driving and the potential for increased overall consumption, cannot be understated. I remain skeptical that regulation, however well-intentioned, can adequately mitigate these risks without leading to a net negative impact on society. The societal costs, including increased healthcare demands, may well eclipse any economic gains. Therefore, I urge continued caution. Perhaps we should more thoroughly explore alternatives such as decriminalization without widespread commercialization, or focus our resources more intensely on education, prevention, and robust addiction treatment services, rather than opening the doors to another large-scale commercialized psychoactive substance.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes, Mr. Chen, and Dr. Hansen for your insightful and vigorous contributions to this important discussion tonight. You've certainly given our audience a great deal to consider. It's clear that the question of cannabis legalization is complex, with compelling arguments on all sides regarding public health, safety, individual rights, and economic impact. There are no easy answers. We hope this debate has helped to illuminate the various facets of the issue. We encourage our viewers to continue this conversation, to seek out further information, and to engage thoughtfully with this evolving topic. Good evening.